Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Swantje Schulze and I'm your host of the day. And we're going to talk about how to bring GenAI use cases to your enterprise. ChatGPT turns 2 years this November. And the question is, did it take us to the land of milk and honey? Or was it rather a big disillusionment? And I think the answer lies somewhere in between. This is your team today. I have with me Julian, who's the practice lead for system engineers, Alan, who is a solution engineer, and Dash, who is a data scientist dialing in from the US. So you see the full knowledge and full power of NIMers here, and I hope that they can answer any question you have. A few words about NIME for those who haven't heard of us before. NIME has been founded in 2008, so we're really past that stage where you can call us a startup. And we come from the open source space, and we now have like 350,000 users worldwide. We operate globally, and we are open and integrative. We are an analytics and AI platform. And let's take a quick look at the product just to explain to you what we're doing. So basically, we enable low code and no code data modeling. So for the people who do not want to code, who cannot code, they can use these little nodes that look like Lego bricks and build their own data model. We have more than 300 data connectors on the left-hand side of this picture. So it's super easy to connect to any data source you have. And then on the right-hand side, you can you have an output of the perfect model, and you can use your existing BI tools like Tableau, Click, Power BI, but you can also use a REST API and give it to another application, or you can use the data apps that come with our product. And with that, let's take a quick look at the agenda. First of all, we'll talk about some challenges that come with the usage of GenAI. Afterwards, we're going to talk about how NIME can help with these problems. Then Dash will show us a couple of common use cases where our customers are already using GenAI in production. And last but not least, for those who are technically interested, we'll take a look at NIME workflow. So what's underneath the hood? What does it look like in detail? We'll finish off with the Q&A session, so stay tuned. And with that, I'll hand over to my colleague, Julian. Julian, the stage is yours.
Thanks a lot, Swantje. So as Swantje has mentioned, we will have a look into the challenges that organizations face when they are trying to adopt GenAI solutions. And there's one important question that organizations need to ask themselves. And this one is basically, are you really innovating with data and AI at this point of time? Are you really making the best out of all the different tools that are out there right now? So 26% of the organizations are reporting that they're creating value from data and AI. But this also means that there are a lot of organizations that are not really doing that right now. And there are various reasons for that and various challenges why the adoption of data tools or AI tools in general is fairly slow. And one of the reasons is that leaders, for example, report that data and AI literacy skills are lacking among the employees. And this also leads to inaccuracies and slow decision making. So having a knowledgeable workforce that is really knowledgeable in data, analytics, and AI is the must to really roll out AI services within an organization. So next to data and AI literacy, of course, there are a lot of different other challenges as well. Specifically for the users, we have accessibility and automation as topics that are relevant to them. How can we enable users to really make sure that they can access AI services easily? How can they include or integrate these services into their data and analytics pipeline? and then also efficiently automate these kind of pipelines in the end. Another topic that is very relevant is trust and reliability. On the one hand side, we want to make sure that our users adopt AI tools because they also trust the responses of these tools. If that's not the case, if they feel like the responses are not reliable, then they will drop it and they will not make use of these tools anymore. On the other side, of course, from the perspective of the organization, we also want to make sure that everything is reliable so that the responses that the users get really are relevant to them in their day-to-day work. Especially the last point is also important not only to users or the organization in general, but also to IT departments within the organizations. So IT wants to ensure that users use the AI tools in a proper way, that there is that we take care of the data privacy, that the security policies within the organizations are fine with what the users are doing in terms of AI. So in general, what we are trying to do is to build some kind of a governance framework around the usage of AI within the organization. Another point is the cost. Of course, we also want to make sure that users don't use AI tools all the time and we have an overspend on these kind of AI solutions. So this is also a factor when rolling out AI solutions within that organization. All these topics are also kind of relevant to internal audit, legal and compliance teams, especially data privacy and security is important. But there might also be ethical concerns and as well regulatory and legal challenges, such as the EU AI Act. So having a look at all of these different challenges combined, we really realized that we need to have some kind of a framework to make sure the usage of AI within the organization is secure and that we can also easily govern the usage of these solutions. Because what we don't want is that users simply make use of AI services without approval from IT or without approval from their legal and compliance team and simply go ahead and use it. So we don't want any kind of, let's say, shadow AI use that potentially might lead to security incidents, to high cost, and also to the usage of rather unreliable results. So we want to avoid these kind of situations that Samsung, for example, had last year, where one of the employees leaked some sensitive code to ChatGPT. And to show you what how NIME specifically can help you with tackling these kind of challenges and answering the questions that I've stated, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Ellen, who will show you the solutions and functionality that NIME brings to you and that can help you to tackle these kind of challenges.
Thanks, Julian. So yeah, I think we all came to this webinar for probably different reasons. Some of us had an understanding of generative AI. Maybe some of us are already using it or interacting with it in some format. And maybe some of us are hesitant to use it because we don't understand it. And also we don't know how to create a governance framework around it so we're using it safely and effectively. So in this next section, I'm going to kind of go through a strategy and how we can cover all of these things, all of these challenges that Julian just mentioned with the use of NIME. So kind of to go over briefly, especially for those who are not familiar with NIME, we really have two sides of NIME. So we have our open source platform, which allows for the development of workflows. So this allows us to have access to different nodes and different resources for developing a data pipeline, whether it's doing something simple like cleaning data to something more complex like interacting with AI solutions. And then on the other side that we'll see also is the NIME Business Hub. The NIME Business Hub can really be seen as a framework for governing the tools or the data pipelines that we developed with the analytics platform. So to start, what is within this KNIME toolkit? So what can we use at KNIME to help us have access to this existing AI technology? So the first thing that you'll find within the analytics platform is going to be the KNIME AI extension. So within the KNIME AI extension, you have a series of nodes. So some of the nodes that are going to be covered in this AI extension is going to be something like an authenticator node. In conjunction to using a credential, we can access third-party tools or services that have these LLM models. So once we have established this connection or this API call, then we can use the LLM connector, which allows us to select a particular LLM model that this provider is hosting. And also, as this technology is developing, we'll see that new LLM models are put into this repository that we'll have access to. The next thing that we'll have in this AI extension is what we call the vector store. So in simple terms, this is just going to be a database of embeddings models. And so we can mix and match particular vector stores that we have access to, which holds these embedding models. So the next one is going to be the embeddings connector, which similarly to the LLM connector allows us to have access to third-party providers that hold these embedding models within them. And the last thing is going to be agents. So this allows us to tap into agentic functioning. So that means that it allows us to make functioning calls through the agent nodes. So that's the first piece in implementing some of these AI tools within KNIME. The next thing, so we're building in the AI extension and accessing AI models like LLM models or embedding models or vector stores with the AI extension. The next thing is within KNIME, we can use AI to actually build our workflows. So traditionally, we often would go back to Google or go back to the community forum to ask questions like, what is the next best node in my workflow? With the KNIME AI Assistant, it is a chatbot where we can ask questions and have recommendations on how to build our workflow out. So this speeds up our development process when using KNIME, as well as oftentimes a lot of people, when they're first using data, they know how to get to point A and B, but they don't know the series or the things that happen in between. So using this chatbot, it allows us to ask questions in a semantic way and get a response and get a recommendation, and also onboards people who maybe don't have the same structural or data background for building these sort of pipelines. Another thing that's going to be found within this KNIME AP user toolkit is going to be evaluation or extensions that allows us to evaluate these models that we're going into. So the first one is going to be the LLM evaluation tool. This is called our GIScard extension, and it uses and builds on the knowledge of open source tool as well for evaluating models called GIScard. And this allows us to evaluate our generative AI, or so our LLM models, as well as machine learning models. And so we can look for something like prompt injection or bias or other fallacies that tend to happen when using these sorts of models. So let's say within our GIScard extension, we detect that we're using something like personally identifiable information. One way of combating this personally identifiable information is using the Presidio extension. So the Presidio extension is going to allow us to go through particular columns. Let's say I'm receiving bank statements and I want to eliminate someone's social security number or credit card information. This Presidio extension allows us to easily do this within our KNIME workflow. So this is the left side of basically the KNIME toolkit that we'll be using. And all of this is available open source and on the analytics platform. So now that we've developed it and we've started interacting with these tools provided by the nodes, we want a way or a framework for governing this. And that's where the KNIME Business Hub is going to come into the picture. So some aspects of the KNIME Business Hub that allows for this governance framework are going to be something like safe automation and deployment. So once I've developed a workflow, maybe I want to automate it on the cadence of executing every single day. I would upload this to the KNIME Business Hub and then execute or schedule this to happen every day at 8 a.m. Let's say I create a chatbot that I want to be shared to my finance department, and I want them to be able to access this chatbot and retrieve questions with it. I could create a data app that can be shared with maybe someone who doesn't want to be a part of this data pipeline or data development aspect. So the Nine Business Hub has this concept of access control, or allowing certain members or certain users to have access to these deployments or access to these schedules and to these pipelines that have been developed. Some additional features are going to be the CDDS, so continuous deployment for data science, which is similar to continuous integration. So this is going to be a framework for development. So things like versioning or unit testing, and making sure that there's some type of governance around what is being developed in our pipeline. Also within NIME is the ability to share these workflows in a dedicated space through workflows or components, which are the logic of many nodes wrapped into a singular one. Some other features that you'll find within the Nine Business Hub is going to be the GenAI gateway. So this allows you to centrally manage or route all of your API calls from maybe a specific provider. So whether that's an LLM model or an embedding model, if I register that within the Nine Business Hub centrally, then it allows users to only access these registered models. Dash later is going to show an example of this, of how the registered model that we want maybe certain members of our team to access can access this directly from the analytics platform. So this addresses a few things that Julian mentioned. One of them is the challenge of reliability. So as a company, if internally we determine that a certain model is more reliable than others, and we want all of our users to only access that model, whether it's a provided model or one that's self-hosted, we can make sure that all of our AP users are only accessing this. Or maybe it's a cost concern. Each model tokenizes and charges differently, and maybe we want to control or have some type of handle over this sort of thing. And then the last thing is going to be the NIME AI service. So if we are utilizing the NIME AI assistant, maybe we want to have these prompts or these queries stored in a centralized place with only certain people in our team to have access to it. And this can be managed in a centralized location on the Nine Business Hub through the NIME AI service. So all of this together, whether it's the development of these workflows with the NIME AI extension, building workflows quicker, onboarding new team members to build workflows better, and then evaluating these models that we're creating, and then providing a framework for it. All of these can be found in the NIME GenAI toolkit. So with that, that's kind of the building blocks or the tools that you can use to now build something that encompasses generative AI. And that's where I'll hand it off to Dash, who will go into kind of the applicable use case of how we can find this and how we can use this in NIME.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ellen. Well said. A very nice introduction to the toolkit. Yes, now that we have more information about the toolkit, what's available with NIME, let's look at how we can implement this, right? How can we take this and use it for our own use cases? So throughout this, I'm going to go through just a few examples. As you can see from the slide, there are tons and tons of use cases that are, they don't have to be industry specific, they don't have to be department specific, but GenAI can really have an effect everywhere. In use cases like customer segmentation, ticket prioritization, inventory optimization, whether that's in research and development, in product and operations, you can really get a lot of use out of GenAI and a lot of value. So I really want to show that off in the next few slides. So one of the first use cases I want to show is maybe a common one. You may have heard of this one before, sentiment analysis. Why would we be interested in sentiment analysis? Your specific department, your company. Sentiment analysis can help with tracking customer satisfaction, right? You want to know if they're satisfied with the support that they're getting with a product. You want to get that information quickly without manually going through. That definitely speeds up that process. Again, maybe on the idea of customer service issues, prioritizing what should be focused on in terms of a support ticket, right? If we want to focus on something that has a very negative sentiment compared to something that's maybe more neutral or positive. And then finally, we can just collect information about the sentiment, right? Gather data so we can make data-driven decisions about how we can improve our products or services, again, just based off of our data collection of sentiment. Now, you can see the image to the right. You can build a sentiment prediction workflow without the use of GenAI. As we can see here, I'm using a few natural language processing and just building a simple decision tree model. Why use GenAI with this use case, or maybe a few other use cases? With GenAI, we can scale this up, right? We can make this a lot faster. We can take large volumes of text and predict sentiment in a very fast, accurate, efficient way. That's one of the things that you want to focus on. And a lot of these use cases, as we'll see, it's just about speeding up the process, scaling it up, making it just more efficient overall. And as is the case with many of these use cases I'll show off, I'll try to give some example images of what a small, maybe example workflow might look like. I have a sentiment analysis workflow here, a little bit different from the one we saw on the previous slide. This one's using that GenAI extension, right? From here, users can give prompts, please predict the sentiment of this text or this table of text, whether it's negative, positive, neutral, etc. The second use case I want to introduce, and I'll show this via the analytics platform a little bit later, is question answering, also known as just building a chatbot, right? Why should you be interested in building some of these self-service chatbots? They help in a myriad of ways, right? If you want to have the option for instant or 24/7 customer support, chatbots can help with this. They also help with, a few sites. I've definitely been on a few sites where I get help from a chatbot. They gather data about what I'm interested in. You can even gather sentiment from these chatbots. And so you understand maybe there's a pattern about potential customers and how we can turn them into active ones, right? So that we can up the amount of current customers instead of just potential customers. And it doesn't even have to be an external facing chatbot. You can get use out of internal chatbots as well, right? If you have HR operations or some kind of typical resource documentation that you want maybe to upskill workers or just have a generic chatbot to answer questions quickly, you can do that. And you can do that with KNIME, with some of our nodes. Again, a very simple example of a chatbot building workflow is something like what we would see here. I'm using some of the Azure OpenAI nodes, but you can also see that I'm referencing maybe some articles, in this case, some toy data, just some Wikipedia articles, but it could easily be my own financial documents, my own HR documentation, so I can give this to other users to have kind of a user-friendly way of gathering information, right, very quickly, instead of scouring through multiple different documents. Same thing, if I wanted to be externally facing, I could have it still collecting information about our own resources or any other report or PDF or text. And finally, the last use case I want to introduce, there's plenty more as we saw via the first slide I showed off, is text summarization. It might be common sense about how this can help, but really, again, it helps by speeding up the process of getting critical information. We have many customers, and many of you probably need to read through extensive documents, whether that's financial, legal, medical, maybe internal documents, right? And that can take up a lot of time, a lot of effort, especially in terms of document length or amount of documents. And so with text summarization, we can save time, right? We can aid in research, as we'll see in just a second, and just improve that information consumption. And again, just very easy to build workflows out to perform this kind of functionality. We have this example workflow available via the Community Hub currently, where I can use our GenAI nodes to get summarization about CVs or resumes. I could easily twist a few things here and there to get summarization on other documents, other text, PDF, reports that I'm interested in. And text summarization is very useful in a number of different situations, right? I wanted to go quickly into a customer use case with one of our current customers, Wave Life Sciences. Before I touch on what exactly they used, let's touch on who Wave Life Sciences is and what kind of problem they were facing. So Wave Life Sciences, they are a leading RNA medical company. They're headquartered in Cambridge and Lexington, Massachusetts, and they sponsor clinical trials in Huntington's disease, Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, a lot of different clinical trials where they need to have access to different medical reports, research, etc. And just knowing that, you may understand that, especially as we move year by year, the amount of medical information, medical reports only increases. So there's an overwhelming amount of information. How does Wave Life Sciences find what report is important for them, for their specific use case, for their clinical trial, and how can they quickly find that and get the critical ideas out? Let's harken back to that last use case I showed, right? Text summarization. So that's exactly what they did. Their solution was building a chat app that could help with a text summarization process. So what this specific app does is it collected information from PubMed based on a user's area of interest, embedded the text with some of our nodes, as well as using a vector store for a RAG-like response to get the chatbot format as we see here, where I can make queries about that research, those medical documents. As we see here, right, I can give it a query in 100 words or less. Please explain why antagonizing GLPR1R leads to weight loss. Again, this is their solution, but you could easily transfer it over to any other kind of situation. Financial information, internal documents, marketing information, pretty much anything under the sun. And that's the fun part about GenAI, is that it's so flexible and there's so many use cases. Again, these were just 3 quick ones. I couldn't go through all the use cases that are available for GenAI, but just to kind of get those gears turning. What I want to do next, we've heard a lot about the toolkit. I've gone over use cases. Let's actually jump to the NIME Analytics platform, right? I want to show what this looks like in action. And I actually want to go back to one of the use cases in creating a chatbot where I can get information quickly, maybe from some report, some text, some document that will speed that process up. So let me jump quickly to that. Share my screen. Perfect. So I have an example workflow, as we see here. I'll go quickly through these nodes where I have my credentials for connecting to OpenAI, connecting to a specific chat model. We can open the configuration. We can go through the embeddings connector, the vector store, right? I'm sending, in this case, a research document, I believe on nutritional research, and I want to create a chat app based around this research. With this, I can create a chatbot, hopefully, as you can see here, if not, where I can give it queries about, what is the title of this article, who is the author, and give it another specific query, such as what is the conclusion of this article, and be able to send it that information, right, that prompt, and get a response rather quickly. Again, much quicker than going through the entire document and trying to get that information, right? I just got a response. The conclusion of this article is that the American cuisine is shaped by various factors, et cetera, et cetera. So that's great to see. But again, this is via the analytics platform. You can see I'm sending the credentials over to the OpenAI authenticator via that credentials configuration node. But as Ellen introduced, how do I take advantage of the GenAI gateway? We have some registered models there that I want to use, that my company wants me to use. How do I make that connection? Very, very easy. I'm currently connected to my hub instance. So I'll just throw a few nodes down here for a second. The NIME Hub Authenticator, the NIME Hub Chat Model Connector, and the NIME Hub Embeddings Connector. So you can see these kind of mirror these 3 nodes that I have above, except those pertain to OpenAI. So what I'll do is I'll connect these first. I'll go to the configuration, and via my analytics platform, I'm already connected to my Business Hub demo instance. Perfect. I'll click OK. I'll click Run. And then for each of these, I can see what's available to myself as a model. I have access to an OpenAI chat model. Perfect. GPT 3.5 Turbo. I'll click OK. The chat model. Yep. Oh, that's what I ran. With the embeddings model, I wanted to choose the OpenAI embeddings, text embedding 3 small. Perfect. So I'll run both of those. They'll execute. And then I just simply drag those connections over, replace these, and then I can execute. And this might take a second, but I just really wanted to show how easy it is to go from the simple OpenAI or Azure OpenAI authentication to implementing that GenAI gateway via the Business Hub. And it's perfect, again, for accessing those registered models. So again, just wanted to quickly give an intro to some typical use cases, as well as what does it look like via the analytics platform for connecting or creating a chat app and then connecting to the GenAI gateway. What I want to do next is bring everybody back who presented today and open up the Q&A session.
Thanks a lot, Dash. Welcome back, my dear colleagues. Yeah, let's move on to Q&A. And I think the first question is half answered, but maybe we can dig a bit deeper here. What are the most common use cases that we see for GenAI? Who would like to take that one?
I can take that one. So I think often we see companies that have internal documentation that they want to be able to retrieve some information from. And so this RAG use case is really common where people want to basically tap into this internal knowledge base and they want other people in the company to be able to tap into this internal knowledge base. So internal documentations and then creating a RAG chatbot to retrieve that, I would say, is something that is usually kind of a starting point with people who want to develop something themselves for the first time.
Yeah, and maybe what I also see when I talk to customers is summaries of text, but also kind of drafts of text. So if you need to write a letter or build a presentation or whatever, the GenAI can build the first draft, and then of course you have to correct it because there's always things that don't fit very well, and the language is maybe not 100% fitting, but that's also something that we often see. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And I think I can answer this one myself. Are there any pre-built GenAI workflows we can use? And the answer is, of course, yes. NIME has this community hub, and you can find GenAI workflows made by NIME and by community members there. So look out for GenAI workflows on the community hub. And okay, which one do I take next? Does NIME have any way of evaluating the reliability of LLM outputs when we've built them?
Yeah, maybe that's one for you again.
Yeah. As introduced kind of in the beginning with the toolkit, we have the GISCard extension, which uses it's an open source tool that we've built into our extension, which helps with the evaluation of something like a large language model. I think what's different than maybe people who come from a data science background and are used to evaluating something like a machine learning model, we're usually used to some type of statistical response. So we're evaluating like a numeric score of what that model is. But with large language models, the way we evaluate them is going to be a bit different. So something like how we're prompting our model, or is our response taking into consideration some bias? And so this Giscard extension evaluates basically all of these variables in how we're scoring these models that we're using, and also comparing maybe one model or provider versus another one, and how it compares performing the same function.
Okay, thank you so much, Ellen. And last but not least, or maybe the second last, Julian, this is a nice question for you. It perfectly fits your part. How does NIME ensure compliance with EU and US AI acts?
Yeah, I would say, the regulations cover a lot of different topics, of course. So one part is transparency and explainability. And there, of course, having a low-code tool in the first place is a very good idea, because we have like the workflows and that really show step by step what is happening. And this also makes it then easier to involve people that are less technical to have a look at the process that was developed. Other topics are, of course, you can also use workflows to embed an AI model in there, but use other kind of functionality within the NIME workflow that to implement checks, for example, to make sure that whenever a question is being asked to an AI model, that you use other techniques to evaluate the responses, such as the Giscard extension, but it can also be regular checks in terms of like looking for personal information in the responses, to really make sure that in the end, when the response gets to the end user, you either say, okay, this is a reliable response, or you say, this is something, sorry, we couldn't get a proper answer to that question. So that's another part. And then, of course, all the model development and the governance part, also as Ellen has explained. We have the CDDS framework, the Continuous Deployment for Data Science framework, which helps you to develop models, put them from, let's say, or develop workflows and put them from, let's say, development space into like a production environment. And this only happens when all the different checks that are required by the EU AI Act, for example, are checked, and we know that the responses and the results of the workflow are really reliable, so that we actually can put it into production. One thing to mention, because this is a very broad topic, we have a blog post for that on the NIME website, which covers exactly this question, which also lists very nicely what are the requirements to be compliant with such regulations, and what kind of functionality NIME has to offer to tackle these challenges.
Thanks, Julian. A very important topic, regulations, and thank you for highlighting our blog on the website. So please, whoever is concerned, feel free to read after this session. And I have a lovely question here about cost control. Is there a node for monitoring or reporting token usage?
Not directly, I would say, but one important thing is that NIME does not host the model. So the model that we're using within our workflows are usually hosted elsewhere. So we're using any kind of AI service. Might it be an open AI service? Might it be an open source model that we might use from Hugging Face and so on? So these kind of services definitely provide some kind of an API endpoint to get that information. And since NIME is an open source tool, it also comes with all kinds of integration that also lets you access these kind of API endpoints. So you could use the REST service extension to get that information into your workflow and then create a nice report out of it.
So the answer is basically there is not a specific node, but you can monitor the token usage. Yes. Okay, cool. Do we still have time? Yes, we do. In which of the hubs are the actual data used for analysis stored and maintained?
Can you repeat the question?
In which of the hubs are the actual data used for analysis stored and retained?
In which of the hubs? So I'm not entirely sure where this question is getting at, but if we are talking about the data that you are using in your workflows, that you are that your corporate data, that data can basically live anywhere within your organization, right? So it could be in databases that are hosted by your organization, to which we simply connect as with the NIME Analytics platform. Of course, when we deploy something via the Business Hub, we can also write out information or results to be stored on the Business Hub. So in that case, everything that you do within NIME will still stay within either your laptop, if you're using the analytics platform, or within the NIME Business Hub, which is also hosted by your organization, so that the data is also stored in your premises or within your own cloud account. When the question rather targets towards the AI assistant, maybe that's worth mentioning, and Ellen hinted at that already. The AI assistant that you can use within the analytics platform to make sure or to basically get help during the workflow development process, usually that's going via the community hub. So we are using our own model at NIME. So when you are asking questions in that AI assistant, those questions will go to the model that NIME has deployed. However, as Ellen has mentioned, there's a control functionality for this AI assistant, so that you can reroute all these requests to go via your own Business Hub and to your own or self-deployed model that then works together with that AI assistant, so that basically none of the information that you're using within NIME or within the NIME AI assistant reaches to any other organization except your own.
Thanks, Julian. I have another question here. I need to process strictly confidential data / documents. Is it possible to run AI models locally on my own PC without any data leaving my computer?
Yes, that's possible. There are some, as Ellen has shown, there's this AI extension. This also has connectors to connect to local models. So you simply provide the path to the model that you've downloaded. For example, you can also make use of the GPT for All tool, which gives you access to all kinds of open source models that you can use locally. And then you simply provide the path to that model and can make use of the model locally, and then make sure that no data is leaving your laptop, but you can still make use of AI in the end.
Okay, I will take one last question here before we come to an end. And yeah, it's maybe a bit tricky for you guys if you don't have corresponding slides, but can you provide some details what is free versus paid based on the demo we saw today?
Yeah, I can touch on that. With the demonstration I showed, I'd say the majority of the nodes are free and open source, right? You could access them via the analytics platform right now. What I'll say is via the paid product that we have, the Business Hub, was when I was connecting to the GenAI gateway. So that last piece of the demonstration where I was connecting to the Hub instance, trying to get to those registered GenAI models, that's more so on the paid product. But again, the OpenAI authenticators, OpenAI nodes, Azure OpenAI, Julian introduced the GPT for all nodes. You have access to those. You might need credentials for the OpenAI node or the Azure OpenAI, but you can use them. Definitely. Good question.
Thank you, Dash. Thanks to the whole team. I knew you know it all. And with that, let me quickly show you the last couple of slides. So let me announce a few upcoming events. I saw in the comments that we have attendees from Singapore, but also from Malaysia, from China. Maybe you're interested in joining our data hub in Singapore, upcoming on December 10th. And for all those who live in Germany or in Europe, please come to our big flagship event in spring. It's on March 18th to the 20th in Berlin, the Spring Summit. And I would also like to announce that we have a special offer. We can do a GenAI strategy workshop with you. We can gather a couple of people from your organization, from the IT department, analysts, business people, and have a workshop where we discuss what are use cases that make sense for your organization, which are the low-hanging fruits, where can you have quick wins without too many technical hurdles, and we're absolutely willing to help you identify like the top 3 ones. So please reach out. We're happy to do this GenAI workshop with you. And last but not least, we're going to share the recording and the slides of this webinar after a couple of days. And you will find these QR codes, and you also have this contact us button, and we will be happy to stay in touch with you. For those whose answers I was not able to answer today, or we were not able to answer today, please feel free to contact us, and we'll be happy to answer. Okay? And with that, more to come soon. Happy to see you again on our next webinar. Have a lovely evening or night or day. Bye-bye.